family Christmas turned painful when my uncle gave my brother a speech and gave me a warning look. He stood up so abruptly his chair legs scraped the hardwood and made everyone flinch. Then he smiled like he planned it to land exactly that way. Uncle Mark lifted his beer like it was a microphone and started talking about family legacy and the next generation. And my brother Ben, fresh haircut, new watch, the whole golden boy glow, sat there with that polite, practiced grin people get when they know they're about to be praised in public. The tree lights reflected off the tinsel and the bowls of cut fruit, and the room smelled like ham glaze and cinnamon candles and whatever floral perfume my mom always wears at Christmas. I watched Mark talk and talk, voice booming over the soft Christmas playlist, and then he did it, mid-sentence like a subtle punctuation. He turned his head, found me across the room, and gave me this long, flat look. Not a glance, a warning, the kind of look that says behave. Like I was a dog he wasn't sure he could trust around guests. My throat tightened immediately, like my body had been waiting for the signal. Mom's eyes flicked to me right after, quick and anxious, checking my face the way people check a smoke alarm. Dad's shoulders went rigid, his jaw working like he was chewing something tough. I hadn't even said a word. I tried to make my expression neutral, but I could feel heat creeping up my neck, the stupid burn of shame I get when I'm being managed in front of an audience. My hands were already damp around my mug of tea, and I kept telling myself, it's fine. Let go. It's Christmas. Mark kept talking. Ben's always been the dependable one, he said, loud enough that my cousin's toddler stopped banging a toy against the coffee table. The pride of the family, he added, and people laughed warmly like that was a harmless thing to say. Ben ducked his head like he was humbled, but I could see his ears go red, and my stomach did that small twist it always does, part bitterness, part something like grief. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, waved it like a trophy. And because I know he's the kind of man who can handle responsibility, he paused for effect. Then he looked at me again, just a fraction of a second, and the warning in his eyes sharpened. We've got a few things to talk about after lunch. My mom laughed too brightly. Dad took a sip of wine like it was medication. My grandma, Nana, sat in her armchair near the window, hands folded in her lap, smiling faintly but not really looking at anyone. It was supposed to be an easy Christmas. Not a magical one, not a Hallmark one. My family doesn't do soft, sentimental Christmases, but at least a smooth one. I promised myself I'd come, stay for lunch, help clean up, and leave before the evening spiral when people are buzzed and start joking in ways that somehow always end up aimed at me. I almost didn't go at all. I've been low contact with Mark for months. He's my dad's older brother, the kind of man who fills every room like he's entitled to oxygen, and he's always treated me like I'm either a disappointment or an inconvenience depending on what day it is. But Nana asked me. She called a week before Christmas, and her voice sounded thin and tired, like she'd been saving her energy for the call. Please come, she said. It's easier when you're here. That alone told me everything. Easier for her, not for them. Nana's house is where we do Christmas most years because it's the only place big enough and because my mom loves the nostalgia of it. The same lace curtains, the same mismatched plates, the same ancient nativity set that always has Mary slightly chipped on one side. Nana has lived there since before I was born. It's the house every family story starts in. It's also the house Mark has been circling like a vulture since Nana's health started slipping last year. I didn't know how to say that to people without sounding dramatic, so I kept it quiet. I didn't even tell my brother the full version, because Ben's relationship with our family is different. Ben is the one everyone expects good things from. When he messes up, it's a phase. When I mess up, it's proof. When Ben says he's stressed, Mom hugs him. When I say it, Mom asks what I did wrong. But the Nana thing? I couldn't ignore that. Over the last few months, Nana's had more doctor visits, more confusion, more days where she repeats herself and then looks embarrassed like she's been caught. Mark swooped in like he was saving her, offering to handle paperwork, to organize things, to make sure the family doesn't get taken advantage of. The first time I heard him say power of attorney, my skin went cold. Not because the concept is scary, Nana does need support, but because Mark said it like a purchase, like a title. It started with small, plausible stuff. He'd help Nana pay bills online. He'd sort out her bank accounts. He'd insist she didn't need to drive anymore and would take her shopping. And then Nana would mention offhand that she didn't remember buying half the things in her pantry. One day, Nana called me upset because she'd gotten a letter from her bank about account changes and she didn't understand it. When I went over, Mark was there already, sitting at her kitchen table with a folder open like he owned the place. He smiled at me in that too-wide way and said, "We're just getting things in order." Nana kept looking at me like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the opening. After that, I started coming by more. Not dramatically, not in a crusader way. I bring Nana groceries, help her with her meds organizer, sit with her and watch her terrible daytime TV, and gently ask questions when something fell off. Once while Nana napped in her chair, I found a stack of papers in the bin, shredded only halfway like someone got interrupted. I shouldn't have dug them out, but I did. They were drafts, legal-looking documents, a form with enduring power of attorney at the top. Nana's shaky signature half there on one page, then crossed out. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit on the kitchen floor for a second. Mark had been pushing her. Maybe she'd resisted. Maybe she'd signed and panicked. I didn't know. I just knew I hated the idea of Nana being cornered at her own table. So when Mark gave that speech at Christmas and then looked at me like I was a hazard, I immediately knew whatever he wanted to talk about after lunch wasn't about Ben. Ben was just the shiny packaging. Mark was talking to me. The speech went on. Mark told a story about Ben as a kid. Always mature, always sensible. Ben laughed and shook his head like, "Oh, come on," even though he was soaking it up. Mark pulled out a small envelope and handed it to him like it was a knighthood. "A little something," Mark said, "to invest in your future." Mom cooed. Dad clapped Ben on the shoulder. My cousin filmed it on her phone. Nana's smile stayed small, tight at the corners, like she was trying to be present but couldn't quite breathe in the room. Then Mark's eyes hit mine again, and he pointed, casual but unmistakable. "And you," he said, tone still jovial but edged. "Try not to get yourself worked up today, yeah? It's Christmas." The room laughed. Not belly laughs. The nervous kind. The please don't let this go sideways kind. I felt my face go hot. I heard my own voice in my head begging me to stay calm, because if I reacted, it would become the story. He ruined Christmas. I swallowed and forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm fine," I said, and it came out too flat. Mark smiled like he'd won something and sat back down. Lunch was served in waves. People crowded the table, passing platters, bumping elbows, joking about who got the crispy potatoes. The kids were sticky with juice and excitement. My aunt kept insisting everyone needed more gravy. The house was loud in that familiar way that usually makes me feel like a guest in my own family. I helped Nana get her plate, made sure she had the soft pieces of ham she likes, because chewing has gotten harder. Nana's hand lingered on my wrist when I set the plate down. "Thank you," she whispered, and her eyes looked glassy, not drunk, just tired. Ben sat near the head of the table beside Dad, like always. Mark took the other head, like always. Mia, my other cousin, not my sister this time, sat across from me and kept giving me sympathetic looks like she knew the energy had shifted. Every so often, I'd catch Mom watching me, not warmly, monitoring. Dad barely looked at me at all, which somehow felt worse than glaring. Mark told jokes. Mark asked Ben about his job. Mark kept calling Ben the responsible one. And every time he did, he'd glance at me after, just quick, like a private reminder. You know what you are in this story. Halfway through lunch, Mark leaned toward Nana with that fake, gentle voice he uses when he wants to sound caring in front of people. "We'll just have a quick chat after, Mom," he said, hand landing on her shoulder a fraction too heavy. "Get those little forms sorted. Nothing to worry about." Nana's fork paused in midair. Her eyes flicked to me. Just flicked. Then she looked down at her plate and took a bite like she hadn't heard him. My chest tightened. After lunch, everyone migrated to the living room and kitchen in that messy post-meal shuffle. Kids tore wrapping paper, adults loosened belts, someone turned the music up louder. Nana went back to her armchair by the window, a blanket over her knees. I started rinsing dishes because doing something with my hands is how I stop myself from shaking. Mark appeared beside me in the kitchen like he'd been waiting for a moment when the room was noisy enough that nobody could hear clearly. "We need to talk," he said low. I didn't look at him. I kept rinsing a plate, hot water steaming on my glasses. "About what?" I asked. He leaned closer. I could smell beer and peppermint on him too, like he'd copied me as gum. "About Nana," he said. "You've been inserting yourself." I set the plate down carefully so it wouldn't clatter. "I visit my grandmother," I said. "That's not inserting." Mark's lips tightened. "Don't play dumb," he said. "You've been asking questions, digging through her paperwork, making her anxious." My hand gripped the edge of the sink. "I didn't make her anxious," I said. "Something is making her anxious." Mark's eyes sharpened. "Watch it," he murmured. "This is not the day for your little crusade." There it was. The same message as the warning look, just with words now. "Stay quiet. Stay in your place." I turned slightly, just enough to look at him. "What forms?" I asked. "The ones in the bin." Mark's face changed so fast it was almost satisfying. For half a second, the mask slipped. Anger flashed. Then he smoothed it back into a smile, like he was greeting a neighbor. "You went through her bin," he said loudly, purposely raising his voice so it sounded like I was the inappropriate one. My mom's head snapped up from the other side of the kitchen. I swallowed. "I found documents with her signature half done," I said, keeping my voice low. "That's not normal." Mark's smile turned sharp. "You need to stop," he said, also low now. "You always do this. You get a little idea in your head, and suddenly everyone is the villain." Mum drifted closer, dish towel in hand, her face already tense. "What's going on?" she asked, eyes bouncing between us. Mark's tone warmed instantly. "Nothing," he said, grinning. "Just telling him to relax." He gets a bit. He made a vague motion near his temple. "You know." Mum's mouth tightened. She looked at me, and I could see her deciding which version to believe based on which one kept the room calm. "Not today," she whispered to me, not to Mark. Not to the man cornering me in her mother's kitchen. To me, like I was the spark. I felt my stomach drop again. "Mum," I said quietly, "he's trying to get Nana to sign power of attorney." Mum blinked. "So?" she said, and my heart sank. "Mark is helping. Nana needs help." "Help doesn't look like pressure," I said. "Help doesn't look like half-signed forms in the bin." Mum's face tightened into that look she gets when she thinks I'm about to embarrass her. "Stop," she hissed. "People are here." Mark leaned back, satisfied. "See?" he said softly, like he'd proven a point. I stood there with wet hands and my heart pounding and realized I was being set up again. If I spoke up, I was the problem. If I stayed quiet, Nana stayed alone with Mark. Then Nana's voice came from the doorway behind us. Thin but clear. "I'm not signing anything today." We all turned. Nana stood there holding the edge of the doorframe, her other hand gripping her walker. Her hair was brushed neatly, lipstick on like she'd made an effort, but her eyes looked tired. She was smiling too, in that same tight way she'd been smiling all day, except now there was steel behind it. Mark's face shifted into fake concern. "Mum," he said, gentle, "nobody's forcing you. We just need to get things organized so you're protected." Nana's eyes went to him and then to me. "I'm protected," she said. "I have people who care about me." Mum's eyes widened. Dad appeared behind Nana, drawn by the change in energy. Ben followed, confused, still holding his envelope like he didn't know where to put it now. Mark's jaw tightened. "This is because of him," he said, nodding at me, and his voice had just enough bite to poison the room without sounding outright cruel. "He's been filling your head with nonsense." Nana's grip tightened on the walker. "Nobody fills my head," she said, and her voice wobbled slightly on the last word. Not from weakness. Anger held back. "I've been filling my own head for 90 years. The room went quiet in a way that made the Christmas music sound ridiculous. Somewhere in the living room a child laughed, oblivious, and the contrast made my throat ache. Dad stepped forward, face flushed. "Mum, what's going on?" he demanded, and I hated that he sounded annoyed with her for disrupting the peace. Nana looked at him. "Your brother's been bringing papers," she said simply. "He wants me to sign." "I don't want to sign." Mum threw her hands up a little, exasperated. "Mark is just trying to help," she said, like repeating it could make it true. Nana's gaze slid to Mum. Help doesn't feel like fear, she said, and my chest tightened because that was exactly it. Nana had been afraid. Quietly, in her own home. Mark's voice went colder. We need to do what's best for the family, he said. If something happens... Nana cut him off. If something happens, you'll be fine, she said, and there was something in her tone that made Mark blink. You're always fine. Ben shifted uncomfortably. What forms? He asked, looking at Mark, then at Nana. His voice was cautious, like he was stepping onto ice. Mark waved a hand. Paperwork, he said. Adult stuff. Ben frowned slightly. What kind of paperwork? He pressed, and I saw for the first time all day that Ben wasn't entirely asleep in the narrative. He just didn't want to be awake. Mark's eyes flicked to him, warning now. Not now, he said sharp. That was the moment I decided I couldn't keep doing this dance. My heart was pounding, my mouth dry, but I moved anyway. I walked to the drawer by the sink, pulled out the torn papers I'd tucked there earlier. Yes, I brought them. I know how that sounds. But I had a feeling something like this would happen, and I wasn't going to let Mark rewrite reality in real time with a smile. I held them out, hands shaking. These, I said, these are the forms. Nana's signature is half on one. It was in the bin. Mum's face went white. Dad stared. Ben's eyes widened. Mark's face hardened. You stole from her bin, he snapped. I found documents that shouldn't be in a bin, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, which almost scared me. If Nana wants help, she can choose it. But she shouldn't be pressured into signing away control, because it's convenient for you. Mark took a step toward me. Not a lunge, not dramatic, but the movement made my body brace like a reflex from childhood. Dad stepped between us automatically, not to protect me, but to stop it becoming a scene. Enough, Dad barked, looking at me like I'd pulled a knife. Nana's voice cut through again, quiet but firm. He didn't steal, she said. I asked him to keep them. Everyone turned to her. Nana looked at Ben then, and her eyes softened slightly. Your uncle has been telling me things, she said, that I shouldn't bother you children, that it's best if he handles it, that it's safer if I sign. She swallowed, and for a second she looked old in a way that hurt. I don't like being scared in my own house. Mum covered her mouth. Dad looked like he'd been slapped. Ben stared at the floor. Mark tried to laugh it off. Mum, you're being dramatic, he said, and the irony of hearing that word from him made something in me go numb. Nana's eyes went hard. Don't you call me dramatic, she said. I know what you're doing. The room stayed quiet. The Christmas music kept playing. The tree lights blinked, cheerful and oblivious. Dad finally spoke, voice strained. Mark, he said slowly, what the hell is this? Mark's face tightened. It's responsibility, he said. Someone has to step up. Nana can't manage everything. And if we leave it, the government gets involved, lawyers. Nana lifted her hand. I already have a lawyer, she said. Mark froze. That was the other bomb. Nana had been quiet, but she hadn't been powerless. She'd just been trying to keep the peace. Her eyes flicked to me again, almost apologetic, like she was sorry I got dragged into it. I didn't want to fight at Christmas, she said softly. But I also didn't want to sign something I don't understand. Ben's voice came out small. Why didn't anyone tell me? He asked, looking between Dad and Mum like he couldn't find the right target. Mum looked like she might cry. I didn't know, she whispered, and for once I believed her. Mum avoids conflict so aggressively, she can convince herself she's blind. Dad's face went red with anger, but it was pointed everywhere and nowhere. Mark, he said again, harsher. Mark's eyes flashed to me. The warning look returned, only now it was furious. You just couldn't help yourself, he hissed, and I realized the warning wasn't about Christmas dinner. It was about control. He didn't want me to speak because if I spoke, people might see the shape of what he'd been doing. Ben finally unfolded the envelope Mark had given him and looked inside. I saw his eyebrows lift. This is money, Ben said, confused. Mark snapped, put that away. Ben didn't. He stared at it like it suddenly weighed a ton. Why are you giving me money? He asked. Mark's smile twitched. A gift, he said quickly. For your future. Ben looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. Where did it come from? He asked. And that, more than anything, changed the room. Because even Ben, the golden child, could sense when something didn't add up. I didn't say it out loud because I didn't know for sure. I didn't have bank statements, but I remembered Nana's confusion about missing purchases. I remembered the bank letter. I remembered Mark's confidence. And I suddenly understood why Mark had used Ben as a stage prop in his speech. If everyone was clapping for Ben, they wouldn't look too closely at Mark's hands. Nana sighed, exhausted. "Everyone out," she said suddenly, and her voice shook a little, but it was final. "I'm tired. I'm not doing this in front of children." Mum blinked. "Mum, out," Nana repeated. "All of you. Ben, you can stay if you want. And you," she added, looking at me, "please stay. I need help." Dad looked stunned, like he didn't know his mother could give orders anymore. Mark opened his mouth, then closed it when Nana's eyes pinned him. The family began to shuffle, awkward and murmuring, gathering coats and kids and half-finished drinks. In the chaos, Mum grabbed my arm briefly and squeezed hard enough it hurt. "Why would you do this today?" she whispered, eyes wet, and I almost laughed because even now she couldn't see that I didn't pick the day. Mark did. I didn't, I whispered back. He did. When everyone finally left, the house felt suddenly enormous and quiet. The Christmas music was still playing, tinny and cheerful, and Nana reached for the remote with a sigh and turned it off. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was honest. Ben sat on the edge of the couch, envelope in his hand, looking like he'd been dropped into a different family than the one he thought he lived in. Nana sank back into her armchair and closed her eyes for a moment like she was gathering herself. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, and it broke something in me, because Nana shouldn't have been apologizing. "I didn't want you to be in the middle. I'd rather be in the middle than have you alone," I said, and my voice cracked on alone. Ben swallowed hard. "I didn't know," he said, staring at his hands. "Uncle Mark just said he was helping." Nana opened her eyes and looked at him. "He helps himself first," she said softly. Then she looked at me. "Your grandfather used to say you could tell a man by what he does when nobody is watching." I sat down on the rug near her chair because my legs felt weak. The tree lights blinked quietly, throwing soft colors across the floor. "What now?" I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Nana reached into the side table drawer and pulled out a plain envelope, different from Ben's. She handed it to me. "This is my lawyer's number," she said, "and copies of what I've signed and what I haven't. I want you there when I talk to him next week. I trust you." My throat tightened. I nodded because I didn't trust my voice. Ben stared at the envelope, like it was a mirror reflecting something he didn't want to see. Am I the bad guy?" he asked, and it was so raw and sincere that my anger softened into something else. "No," Nana said immediately. "You're not the bad guy. You're just used to being told you're safe." Ben flinched like she'd hit a nerve. I didn't leave Nana's that night until it was dark. Ben stayed too. He didn't say much, just sat and listened while Nana explained, in her slow, tired way, how Mark had been coming by with paperwork and how she'd felt pressured and embarrassed and frightened. Ben kept rubbing his thumb over the edge of the envelope in his hand, like he was trying to erase it. Before Ben left, he stopped by the door and looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for not noticing. I wanted to say it's not your fault. I wanted to be generous, but I also wanted to be honest. So I said, I've been getting warning looks my whole life, Ben. You just never had to see them." Ben's eyes flicked down. "Yeah," he whispered. "I see them now. The fallout was messy." Of course it was. Mum cried for days because Christmas was ruined. Dad blamed me because he didn't want to face that his brother had been pressuring his mother. Mark sent me a text that said, "You've crossed a line," like the line wasn't him trying to get Nana to sign away control. Some relatives stopped messaging me completely. A few messaged me vague things like, "Family is family," which is code for please go back to being quiet so we don't have to feel uncomfortable. But Nana called me 2 days after and said, I slept better, and that was the only thing that mattered. The strangest part is how my family treated the whole thing like my emotions were the main danger. Not Mark's actions, not Nana's fear, my tone, my timing, the fact that I spoke at all. I keep replaying that moment at the start. The speech, the warning look, and I realize it wasn't just about controlling me. It was about keeping a system intact. The system needs me to be the problem, so nobody has to look at the real ones. It needs Nana to be confused, so Mark can be helpful. It needs Ben to be the pride, so nobody asks where the money came from. It needs Mom to be peaceful, so she can pretend she isn't choosing sides. And it needs Dad to be strong, so he never has to admit he's scared of conflict. And it needs me, quiet. I don't know what happens next long term. I know Nana has a lawyer. I know I'll be there. I know Mark will rage, and the family will pressure me to let it go, because letting it go is how they survive. I know I'll probably be the villain in a few group chats I'm not even in. I know Christmas next year will be weird, if there's one together at all. But I also know this. When Mark gave my brother a speech and gave me a warning look, it wasn't because I was a threat to Christmas. It was because I was a threat to the quiet little story he'd been building. One where Nana signs what he wants, nobody asks questions, and I stay small enough to fit under the table like a footstool. I'm tired of being the thing they watch for sparks while the actual fire burns in the next room.